Can I ask Father Michael to come to the stage now and tell us a bit about his work and his book, please?
Very much. Vice Chancellor, for welcoming me here to Hope once more. Sitting in my office in Cape Town, minding my own business. Today I had a phone call to say, only ecumenical university in Europe, Liverpool Hope, was offering me an honorary doctorate. That was one of the joyful moments for me to come a couple of years ago. But I was invited to become connected and to Archbishop Desmond Tutu Center for War and Peace. As Stephanie said, she was present with Michael in Cape Town when we had the first launch of my memoir, Redeeming the Past, My Journey from Freedom. So for me, it is a source of great gratitude that I could be at a conference focusing on memory, space, and conflict. And of course, I from an Institute for Healing of Memories. So as soon as I saw the title of the conference, it resonated with the kind of work that we're doing. Let me just say a little bit about the memoir, Redeeming the Past, My Journey from Freedom Fighter to Healer. About 16 years ago, I had a biography written about me. Of course, I was 30 at the time. And then some of the reviewers of that biography said, but one day we'd like to hear from him speaking in his own voice. And during these 16 years, many people have said to me, you need to write, you need to write, you need to write. The problem has always been that whenever that conversation was happening, I was on the way to an airport. Then one day, a man called Stephen Karakassian, who was an Armenian-American born in Jerusalem, who was volunteering over a period of the years with the Institute in Cape Town, he said to me, you need to write, and I'll do the writing. And suddenly this project began to be born. And we were invited to a Catholic, Roman Catholic religious house north of New York. Some of you will know it. It's the Maryknoll Fathers and the Maryknoll. Went there for 2 months, and every day we recorded interviews about my life journey. And of course, he also had access to everything I had ever written. And then he began to write the chapters, and to and fro on email, chapters would go backwards and forwards. And then towards the end of the project, we were very fortunate. We won a fellowship to Bellagio in Italy, to the Rockefeller Center there. If anybody knows what the Garden of Eden is like, well, it's a bit like the Bellagio Center, Rockefeller Center. And during that month we went through every chapter, every sentence, every word, until it was complete, and this memoir was then about to be born. Some of you have read it already, and those of you who haven't will find that in many ways it's in the spoken voice. People who know me well say, as they read, they can hear my voice. And many journalists have asked, why now? I think the why now is because in my work, I travel the world. I travel the world listening to the pain of the human family. But in these years, human family has taught me a great deal. And the book is a gift back to the human family. Yes, it's my story, but particularly in the second half of the book is the story of a number of people across the world, whether indigenous women from the Aranda people in the center of Australia, from Alice Springs and from Perth. There are voices from Northern Ireland. There are voices from different parts of the United States. There's a young man speaking in his own voice who joined the FARC and came back from the FARC disillusioned and began to dance with a dole as he had done as a child, as a way of recovering tenderness. What's fascinated me about many of the reviews of the book is that in the reviews, people don't talk about the book, they talk about themselves. And I'm delighted by that, because it means that the book has been a mirror to people of their own life journeys. And it's not that everyone who reads it has lost their hands or an eye, but everybody as a human being has faced choices, but also lives with hurt and harm because of the journey they've traveled. And so it is, in one sense, specific, small, precocious, religious boy from the land of the Kiwis who goes to Australia and goes to South Africa, and gets bombed and then travels the world. But another way, it's simply the story of us as human beings. And one of the decisions I made when I decided that, yes, it was the time to write, was that there had to be a degree of self-disclosure. And I said things in the book that I never ever told another human being. Because it seemed to me that if one projected oneself as perfect and without fault and without contradiction, people might find it entertaining, but they would never be able to relate to it as a human story. I'm particularly honored tonight that the I Choir is here. And I know that some of you have and perhaps still struggle with mental illness as well. And the reason I want to honor you for coming, I've long realized that music has a major role to play in healing. And I have no doubt that it's played that role in your own lives. But after I was bombed, I remembered seeing a picture. It was a holy icon of the Orthodox tradition. That holy icon had a picture of Jesus with one leg shorter than the other. And of course, in iconographic Western art, Jesus is always the perfect white male figure. But this picture of Jesus with one leg shorter than the other picked up the image from Isaiah. One of the translations of Scripture talks about the Messiah being marred beyond human semblance. People were repulsed by his very appearance. I began to realize that perfection is not the human experience, but actually brokenness, disability, imperfection, incompletion is the experience we all have. And that those of us with disabilities, whether they are mental disabilities or physical disabilities. And some of us, like me, dramatic. They tell the human family something about all of us. Our disabilities remind the rest of the human family that we need each other to be fully human. Can't be fully human by ourselves. I'm here with my brother, Father Moaketsi Motachani, who's from the same religious order. Me. But if I had both hands, he would have stayed home. Because I could have been fine by myself. But I can't do it. I can't do it alone. I need somebody else. But we all do. Not necessarily always to travel, but to become more and more whole, to become more and more complete, to become... And I suppose it's recognizing that perhaps in the Western world we've taken independence to the absurd degree, independence and individuality. The healthier vision of the human family is about interdependence. But also I'm grateful to Stephanie for reminding us that today is the 18th anniversary of Srebrenica. I went there to Srebrenica. I said there, very close to where that terrible massacre of men and boys, young Muslim place. I said in this theater close by that for me this place of shame for the human family. The place where we failed as an international community. I thought I was saying something which was everybody would agree with. We were asked to leave, and to leave at speed, because they said my life was in danger. For speaking, stating the obvious. And I want to give testimony. I mean, here in this room today are academics, practitioners, people who are helping heal the human family. And I'm sure some of you may not have thought of yourselves as healers. The role that you play in acknowledgement. I've come to see myself the importance, both, if you like, of knowledge and acknowledgement. So, for example, in a family, maybe abuse is going on. Everyone in the family knows, but it's a guilty secret. Knowledge, but there's no acknowledgement. And whether in the photographic exhibition or in many of the papers that are here, and I love some of them that are even talked about, they use the word minor actors. I think that there's a very important role in providing a basis of truth. It has to be the basis in which reconciliation and healing has taken place. And often the wounds of the human family go unacknowledged across generations. Of course, I suppose we heard it in a particular dramatic way from Emilio last night. Unacknowledged pain of a massive scale in Spain from the Civil War. But it hasn't gone away. It's crossed generations. So in the acknowledgement, significant step towards healing takes place. Not the end of the journey, but the beginning, in which people's pain is heard, accepted as true. So I just want to thank each of you for the role you play, because I think we are a generation where the past, in many parts of the world, has come back to bite us. And if we're a generation that can face the truth of both old and more recent wounds, we can leave to our grandchildren a world that is kinder, gentler, and more. Thank you very much.
We thought we'd give you some time to let this sink in and think about it, and we'll listen to the choir, and we're going to perform 3 songs for us, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions afterwards. So I'd like to ask the choir to come on stage now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first song, quite appropriately, is an African song, and I fully comprehend that using the term Africa, large place. And I've struggled to find translations for these, so I've been picking the brains of my friends here sitting beside me tonight to get translations. First one's called Milizwe. Thank you. Don't know why I don't just put this a little higher. All right, the next song is, well, you'll know it. I won't even tell you what it is. You'll see. Thank you. Seldom heard. Next song's a little more boisterous. It's called Ain't Gonna. Thank you. We'll be back.
We'll get another chance of hearing the choir at the end of the event, but now we're going to give you a chance to ask questions to Father Michael if there are any. We have a mobile microphone, so if you have a question, if you can just hang on until you've got the mic.
So while you're preparing for the first question, a couple of months ago I was in New York City, and I was being recognized, acknowledged, and there were 3 awards. And one award was for Harry Belafonte, and the other award was for a very popular band in South Africa, Freshly Ground. And then there was me. So I thought, well, you know, I don't have a song and dance routine. Where do I fit into these awards? But I was reflecting, you know, with them how, in the darkest days of apartheid, it was our musicians and artists who helped us to sing and dance our way to freedom, who in their music gave us a picture of where we would get to one day. And today in South Africa, there are many signs that we are still a traumatized nation. So I've been beginning to say to our artists, just as we sang and danced our way to become a democratic state, it's our musicians and our artists who can both give us a picture of where we are now through their songs and through their lyrics and through all the forms of artistic expression. But they can also inspire, encourage us, and give us hope on our journey towards healing and wholeness. So thank you for being such a treasure. Should we give them another clap? when you have no hands, you have to get other people to clap for you. So thank you for being the willing people. Okay, I think it's now open to questions from the audience. Thank you. I just recently, I was invited to go and spend time in South Sudan at a conference on reconciliation, and then to go and visit communities. Unfortunately, I don't have yet the gift of bilocation, so I was unable to accept that invitation. South Africa Truth and Reconciliation Commission is the most well-known, and because of that, people quite wrongly say ours was the first, when of course ours, some of you will know, ours was about the 13th. And as a country, we look to Latin America to try and say, well, how do we provide the bridge from, in the case of Latin America, from dictatorship to democracy. So we looked to Chile and Argentina and subsequently Uruguay and El Salvador and other places. But we also took other order when it came to our TRC. Most of the TRCs in Latin America, they were set up and then they disappeared into smoke-filled rooms for several years. And then they came out and then they published reports that academics read. And the difference in South Africa, our Truth and Reconciliation Commission happened in public space, 99% of it. So we put a mirror in front of the country and said, this is what we did to each other for nearly 5 years. It's also true to say that a large percentage of the people who have the same color skin that I have turned off the television, turned off the radio, didn't read the news, and so remained very much in denial. Now, there's been a number of commissions since then across the world, and some of them have worked very well, some of them have not worked well, and some of them did not make some of the mistakes that we made. The biggest weakness of our commission was in some ways the failure of the state to deal with reparations timelessly and generously, which means in South Africa, much of the community of victims remains cynical, frustrated, and bitter, while it's been celebrated all across the world. So I would hope that the South Sudanese, I think they can learn things from our experience. But I think the key issue is that you cannot, you see, start the sentence again. After traumatic periods of human history, the preferred historic option is to seek to bury and forget. It's the favorite option in the human family. It's just that ain't worked nowhere yet. So the unacknowledged past then infects the present. So I think the question for the South Sudanese is in their context, with their history, how can they, on the one hand, face the building of a new society, but also acknowledge and deal with the wounds of the past? And you see, when you think about a nation, you think about politics, sociology, economics of a nation. We think of individuals psychologically, sexually, emotionally, spiritually. But we often fail to look at how the national story impacts the lives of individuals. And there's any amount of evidence that when transitions come and the permission to use weapons is withdrawn, that family, sexual, domestic violence escalates hugely. And then people foolishly say that what's happened in public space has nothing to do with what's happened in private space. And I want to suggest there's a constant interplay between what happens in public space and what happens in private space. So I would hope that my Sudanese sisters and brothers will also look at what's happening in the family and the community, as well as what's happening in institutions. In South Africa, I keep saying that we need a new conversation in which we can speak about our pain. So I think equally for the South Sudanese, there has to be space and permission where people can speak about our pain. One of South Africa's great leaders, Chief Luthuli, once said, those who think of themselves as victims eventually become the victimizers of others. So the importance of people having their pain acknowledged gives the possibility that they begin to leave victimhood behind. Otherwise, there'll be a great cycle of victims who become victimizers that can even cross generations. I'm sorry, it's a long response to a significant question. Yeah. So, brother.
You come from New Zealand, or born in New Zealand, weren't you? Do you ever envisage returning there at the end of your days?
Did I ever?
At the end of your days, you know, when all this work is complete, you know, I mean, you're in South
Do
Africa.
I envisage returning to New Zealand?
Yes.
They pay me to live outside the country.
Which is a shame. It's a shame because New Zealand's a beautiful place. I've been there.
Some years ago, I was given a national award by the New Zealanders, and a friend of mine who's a Catholic priest wrote to me and he said, I've been here all these years and they've never given me an award. Why do they give you one? I said, I agreed to live overseas. But in a serious way, you know, and it's actually fascinating. Where's Professor Pillay? Where's he hiding? He's where? Okay. Now, we have these extraordinary, almost mirror opposite stories where he was born in South Africa and ended up becoming a Kiwi and then being kidnapped by Liverpool, where my story, you see, is that I'm a Kiwi who became a South African. But I actually have dual nationality because I never rejected New Zealand. I embraced South Africa. And under both the laws of both jurisdictions, we're allowed to hold two passports, which is quite useful when it comes to rugby because normally my team wins.
Well, I have an experience of New Zealand. My daughter went over there and spent 8 years, and I went over there for her 21st birthday, and I packed a lot of her clothes. Female clothes, right? And big, heavy. And I was going through Wellington, and by God, this woman, passport officer, stopped me. I had to open the bag, and all this female stuff came out, you know, and I didn't know where to put my face, you know what I mean? And I said, why me? And she said, we stop every 6-1.
Aha.
Anyway.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello. I might have been boring, Father, but as you say, everyone's got the pain, trouble to tell. And through my life, I've been a 30-year of mental illness. And the one thing that stands out all the time is young girls who've had abortions. And
young girls?
Well, as I say, but the thing is, abortions. What's the name of it? Well, abortion's not a crime and pregnancy's not an illness. So, you know, you can say this, that, and the other. The country's saying the other thing. As I say, you know, I've known quite a few girls, and what's her name? Father Benedict Grossell. He said the truly poor are single mothers with mental health issues. You know, so But if you say, well, it's not against the law and all that, well, it's not against the law, well, you know, where do you stand on the abortion issue? You know, that's it. I would say I'd be against it. My politics are pro-life. You know, I don't want to apologise for that. But as I say, it's a part of your feminist so-called credentials to have had a couple of abortions.
Yeah, no, thank you. Obviously, we could enter an extraordinary debate, but I think that personally, so, well, I think within the let me go back a step. Within the Christian family, there's a range of opinion, and it remains contested ground. I happen to be an Anglican. In 1930, the Anglican bishop said to Anglicans, Christian parents should prayerfully decide how they should limit their families, which of course was not speaking in favor of abortion. But I think we may go off the subject, but except to say that the things that happen to us in life, whether we did them and we feel totally justified and correct, often haunts people. You know, my work is about healing of memories, and I have listened to the stories of women who don't think going for an abortion was wrong, but who still carry deep feelings inside them because of the choices. And they're not saying I made a wrong choice, but they're saying there's still a sense of grief because of loss that is there. And I guess my focus is not on being judgmental, but in helping people address their pain and deal with it for whatever reason. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And also, thank you for, I also want to honor you for saying, and I've struggled with mental illness for so many years, because I think sometimes in society, people don't want to hear that. So I'm glad you felt okay to say it, and it's okay. So thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Palestinian from Bethlehem. And one of the things that we are supporting at Bethlehem University is the boycott, the BDS. And one of the issues that we face is about the misunderstanding of your vision about reconciliation and healing, in terms of some people would come with projects understanding that bringing Israelis and Palestinians together, it's part of healing with the situation in Palestine, and where we totally don't support, because we believe that you never mix or bring the oppressed with the oppressors together. So my question is, what is your message to the international community when they have this confusion between reconciliation for injustice and understanding that solidarity with the oppressed is a way to empower and bring injustice? Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. It's interesting that in Cape Town, if things get more difficult in the Middle East, the temperature goes up in Cape Town. As of course it does in many other parts of the world. But I suppose you are raising issue of reconciliation on one hand and justice on the other. In the middle of the 1980s in South Africa, there were those who said, we must simply reconcile. And if I put it crudely, who would say, well, black and white could pray together, sing black and white together, but then the white people would go back to their wealthy reality, and black people would go back to the ghetto. And the truth of the matter is that we had to slay the monster, which was apartheid. We had to get rid of apartheid, and then healing and reconciliation, that long journey could begin. But if I can speak out both sides of my mouth for a moment, if Nelson Mandela, and the world is thinking of him as he takes those final steps on earth, we don't know how long that will take, but if he had come out of prison after 27 years and said it's time to get them, we would have died in our millions. But instead he said, never, never, never again shall people do to one another what was done to us. So it was very important that there are leaders on all sides of a conflict who have dealt with their stuff before there is a change in power, because damaged leaders damage those they lead. So in one sense, time is not yet come in Israel-Palestine for healing. They still have to find a just political settlement. But let's say tomorrow there is a just political settlement of the Palestinians' rights and of the people who live in the state of Israel, just agreement. Then the long journey of healing of memories will begin. It will be something whose time has come. But I pray that there's enough individuals who have already dealt with their stuff. I was doing a healing of memories workshop in a very remote part of South Africa, and sitting in a building with a mud floor on simple benches, and an elderly woman stood up and she said, "Are you working with our leaders?" And I said, "Well, we've chosen to work in these communities." She said, "Well, you should work with our leaders. They're much more messed up than we are." And I think often in conflicts, the communities have had enough of war. They want peace. But persuading the leaders, sometimes I think the leaders need to be locked in rooms until they, sort themselves out. But if a settlement is unjust, the wounds will go on and the conflict will go on. So there's this interplay between, justice and the journeys of healing. And the reality is everywhere in the human family, people are excluded from power and wealth and privilege and dignity. Eventually they pick up arms. Was it Pope? Which Pope was it? Was it Paul VI who said, if you want peace, work for justice?
I hope it's a simple question. It's what gave you and what still gives you hope to continue this work?
Thank you. Originally, what enabled me to make a life-giving response to a tragedy for my life was the prayer and love and support from people across the world. I often say that when I die, I won't need a funeral, because people said all the nice things then. I don't know why people wait till we're dead before they said nice things. Towards the end of my book, I tell a story about two men in prison, and they're in the same prison cell, and they both look out the window. And one saw mud, and the other saw stars. And I think on a bad day, I look out on the human family, and not least in my beloved South Africa, and I see the mud. On a good day, wonderful day, I look out, I see the stars. On a realistic day, I see the challenges we face. but I also see the signs of hope. And for me, perhaps the greatest signs of hope are young people I meet across the world, who, not least in South Africa, who are leading beautiful lives, who know they're somebody, who know they're of value, and are helping make the world gentler, kinder, more just. But I'm also inspired in our country, especially by African women. You know, South Africa, there were generations of people who, in their lifetime, they only saw things get worse. They never saw things get better. But they dared to hope. They dared to hope. And they didn't see Nelson Mandela become the president, but they had the courage. So when I think back of those, especially women, I feel hope. But also, the last thing I'd say that in my religious tradition, there's a day of judgment. And I've got a feeling that that day of judgment, that God won't say to me, did you heal South Africa? Did you sort it out? Is everything okay? Is the human family fine now? But God might say, were you able to recognize your own woundedness, your own need of healing, and because of your contribution, is the world kinder, gentler, and more just? I hope I can say yes. Thank you very much.
I'm pleased to say that Professor Gerald Pile, who's Vice-Chancellor and Rector of Liverpool Hope University, has agreed to give us a brief response to this talk, and I look forward to having
I was a young university student just out of high school, went to university in Durban and met this New Zealand chaplain in a white robe which he wore, the satchel around his shoulder, and that was Michael Lapsley in the 70s. And I got to know this chaplain and got to like him very much. And then one day, the chaplain disappeared and nobody heard of him and nobody knew what happened. It was only years later that we heard this horrific story of what in fact happened. He's escaped to Lesotho and then escaped again to Zimbabwe, and the horrible act of deceitfulness and evil that the security police of South Africa then did in tracing him and warning him there was a letter coming from a church, and when he opened it, almost died. And so they tracked him down to kill him. The extraordinary thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that in our world, we do try to silence our prophets. Don't like listening to things that are not complimentary, and things that hurt our egos are the things we try to snuff out. I'm glad, Stephanie, that the Desmond Tutu Center is named after Archbishop Tutu, who visited us at this university to give us his name to the center. I'm glad in that great tradition of Desmond's vision, Archbishop Desmond Tutu's vision, Liverpool Hope is continuing reaching out and doing extraordinary things like this, calling people together at the university, and not just analyzing and pontificating or theorizing, but being able to also have moments like these where not only our minds are stimulated by conferences, but our hearts are touched by hearing real examples of courage and faithfulness. I'm delighted for Dr. Lapsley that, yes, I went to New Zealand after the great day of democracy, and you came from New Zealand, and here we meet in this lovely city that I love so much, Liverpool, the city that has a lot of promise and has for many a year been a welcoming city to all people, irrespective of their color. And certainly have welcomed me as a new member, it's 10 years now, to this city. It's important that the university continues this work. It's important that you continue to support us, because you and I were there in '94 when the prisoner comes out of prison and becomes our president. And what a great day that was, when black and white, rich and poor, important and unimportant, stood in a line for the first time, and those of us who were not white voted for the first time in our lives. A great day when South Africa, for the first time, was a country together. I had the great joy of meeting Nelson Mandela because I was professor at UNISA, the University of South Africa in Pretoria, and he, while in prison, did his law degree through my university. But the apartheid government didn't allow him to come out and graduate, so when he did come out, a few of us senior professors were lined up to welcome the great man. And what a great joy that was to see this angry young man, 27 years later, become a great instrument of peace and this great reconciler. South Africa has thrown up some extraordinary people. Going back to 1894, the young Indian lawyer, fledgling lawyer, inexperienced, graduating from England, ends up there on a 3-month arbitration in South Africa and spends 20 years. And that was Mahatma Gandhi. His great conversion happens not in India, but in South Africa. And he comes in a tie and a suit as a new lawyer, and he leaves 20 years later in sandals and a dhoti as an instrument of peace. So it was South Africa that makes Mahatma Gandhi. It was South Africa that gave us great figures like Dube and Albert Luthuli, I wrote a book about many years ago, the first black person to win the Nobel Peace Prize, the president of the ANC. It was this country that gave us people like Mandela, who sadly is very ill and we may lose him in a short while. Trevor Huddleston in Firetown. Ben Marais, Professor Marais, who the Afrikaans theologian who was almost defrocked for saying that apartheid had no biblical basis, who I succeeded I was appointed to his chair at the university in Pretoria. Great people that this country has shaped. And Michael, you are one of those great people. In that tradition going back to Gandhi through Mandela and Desmond Tutu and others, you are among us, shaped by South Africa to be an instrument of peace. And I'm delighted you could be on the board of this institution, of this institution's Peace Center, that you could come for these visits. And every time you come, you leave us with a message that touches our hearts. When you got your doctorate from this university in the Catholic Cathedral, you said something which I keep repeating. You said that Liverpool Hope is not just worried about the world of work. This university and its staff and students are worried also about the work of the world. Do you remember saying that? And that is a wonderful summary of what this university is about. Yes, we worried about the world of work, but more importantly, we worried about the work of the world. And that every time you come, you remind us that we have much to do, and the task of academic work is to make a difference, a real difference for good in the world. Thank you for coming to us again.
Thank you, Professor Pillay, and I'd like to use this occasion to ask the choir to come back on stage and conclude this event.
Great. I'm glad Michael had an opportunity to point out the strengths of music and healing and the like, because sometimes I know for a fact personally it has a huge impact in people's lives in a healing way. And then at other times, I think it seems rather trite when I see what people have been through and done in their lives. However, the next tune we're going to do is called Fix You. We're going to do a little clip of it, and we're going to segue into something. I mentioned doing tunes from the continent of Africa, and I didn't say that on one hand I was feeling the appropriateness of doing so, on the other hand I was thinking, can we pay them justice, these tunes that we don't know the translations to? We hope so. I have a hard time doing that tune without getting a little teary. The next song is about recovery and hope also, and it's from an unlikely source. It's a Beach Boys song, and it's called In My Room.
Tell my secrets
Thank you very much. That's it for us. I'm going to put a little plug in for us for those of you that out there that might like to sing. We rehearse at St. Bride's Church off Catherine Street. Where is it we rehearse? 6-ish. Supposed to be 6. And we enjoy biscuits. We have a coffee break, and we have a good little community and social time, and we welcome anything that people would like to bring. We sing quite a variety of things, as you can see. So any of you that would like to join us, feel free to do so. I don't do auditions. I believe everyone can sing. My term for this is, it's a self-regulating choir. I hope to see some of you there. That'd be good to see you. Thank you very much. This was fantastic. I really appreciate being invited here. I've been looking forward to this for some time, so thank you too.
Well, this represents the end of our evening, which is probably going to continue on the corridors. As we're talking about the corridors, most of you will already have seen the exhibition we have here at the moment, which is called Monumenti, The Changing Face of Remembrance. You may have a chance to speak to the organizer who is sitting here. He will be around as well. It's an exhibition that displays the importance of commemoration in the Western Balkans, and the Srebrenica monument is there amongst many others, about 45 others. So if you want to have a look, it starts on the first floor, and you go around the corridors clockwise, and you continue on the ground floor. We will also have a book sale, and you may be lucky to get a signature into your book outside, so you may want to purchase a book, and Michael Lapsley will be happy to sign, he has said. So I think just to close off, I can only really thank everybody involved in this. Everybody behind the facades who's given a lot of administrative support, and I see a lot of faces in the audience who've supported this event, and I would like to thank you for helping me organize this. And obviously particular thank you to Father Michael Lapsley for giving us his time, for making his way, a very long way to Liverpool from South Africa. It's a very long flight. We really appreciate he's here. Many thanks to Professor Rees, to Professor Pillay for supporting this event, and of course many thanks to the I Choir for, reaching out to our hearts. Thank you very much.
Can I also thank Stephanie Kapler for all her work on the conference and the events today. I think herself and the colleagues who worked with her has done an excellent job. I'd like to say on behalf of Liverpool Hope University and the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, we're really proud of Stephanie's work and that. So thank you, and we show our appreciation.